are hitting record on everything this morning. All right, good morning. It is so nice to see everybody again. I'm Coach Mary for another episode of Friday Morning Fuel, and in fact, this will be our obviously last episode of 2024. It's been a great year so far, but we're ready to tie it home and get us ready and excited for our big goals for 2025. So I thought it would be very prudent to talk about some breakfast ideas, as a lot of us are looking for nutrition goals or new habits to incorporate for the following year and beyond. So today we're going to be speaking to breakfast ideas that have both high protein and high fiber components. And I'm going to just put a disclaimer as high protein is going to be anything that's 30 grams or more, and that high fiber is anything that's 7 grams or more. Again, that is not a clinical or textbook definition. That is just something that I personally like to define for my meals. There's different targets and ranges for protein and fiber needs depending on whether you are a male or female, and also considerations for how physically active you are throughout your day, week, and across the month, and so on. All right, so we're going to talk about the formula for what it takes to build a high protein and high fiber breakfast. But before we get into that, I'm going to take it back to our dietary needs for fiber and for protein. All right, so fiber needs are going to be different for men and women. Men just being slightly larger on average, both in just total mass and lean body mass. So men should be shooting for about 30 to 35 grams or more of fiber per day. And ideally you want to space that out across your meals and your snacks. So if you are 3 square meals a day, you're looking at about 10 or so grams of fiber per meal, which you can totally hit, by the way. Not saying that that's the only way you have to do it, but it's doable. And then if you're somebody who breaks it into smaller meals, like 4, 5, or 6 things, again, you can break up that fiber into more manageable amounts. For women, it's a slightly less, anywhere from about 25 to 30 grams. I think at this point in time, the research suggests that a little bit more is probably beneficial, but I don't think they have determined yet what the kind of end range is where we max out on that health benefit of increasing fiber in our diet. So what fiber does for us is a whole host of things. We have different types of fiber. So we've got our soluble and insoluble fibers. I'm going to just broadly classify it as that. And then we can also break down some of our fibers are prebiotic fibers, which means they are food for your gut biome. So bottom line, eat fiber from a variety of different sources, and fibers are found primarily in plants. For that exact same reason, again, take it back to the fact that we have insoluble and soluble fibers. Those are what make up basically the cell structure of plants, and that's why they are hard to digest, especially for us humans versus an animal like a cow, for example, like true herbivores that have much more digestive capacity to break down a multitude of fibers. All right. So soluble and insoluble fibers, so they're going to be found in plants once again. So things like your produce items, any of like your berries, spinach, mushrooms, fruits and vegetables. You can also find fiber in your grains and your breads as well. Grains are going to be more of like your what we call whole food sources, so minimally processed things like your oats, your rice, your barley, your quinoa, etc. And then anything where they get processed and turned into a different product, like a bread or a wrap or an English muffin. Not that those are bad to have a time and a place, just that when they go through that processing, some of that fiber is removed. So we're going to talk about that later when we're building some of our breakfast ideas for today. All right, let's hop over to protein real quick and talk about some of our protein recommendations. So there's a lot of information on the internet about how much protein one needs. So first, it would very much help to identify what your physical activity level is. So if you are somebody who is classified as a bit more sedentary, and I don't want that to come across in such a negative way, but if you're not doing like exercise that day, or if you are sitting for long periods of time, not really getting in a lot of walking. So I think all of us go through sedentary days in our life, so I don't think it's fair to just say sedentary is a bad thing. But if you're somebody who's generally not as highly active, your protein needs are going to be a little bit lower, but it is still important, still absolutely important. And we do protein needs based on weight. Even better if you can do it on lean body mass. So that's part of what the big debate and discourse is about, what formulas to use versus total body weight versus lean body mass. So calculating lean body mass, and you can do that a number of different ways. In fact, you can come on down to the fitness center and we do one of those BIA handheld devices tests. So that'll tell you your breakdown of like body fat percentage. There's also in-body scans, which maybe your doctor's office or other facility might have one, can also give you a readout of percentages for your fat-free mass and your fat mass. All right, so beside the point there, let's move it along. So looking for at least 0.8 grams per pound on the very low end for somebody who is sedentary. So even if you took that as just your body weight, so let's say we have somebody who's really small, I'm going to make the math really simple, but we have somebody really small who's 100 grams or so, 0.8 would be about 80 grams or so. That's not too hard to shoot for. Again, that's if you were looking at your just total body weight. I think that's a good high end. But their needs are probably going to be a little bit lower, maybe about 50 or 60 grams. So if you have questions specifically about what your protein needs are, send me a message or hit us up in the chat afterwards. I am a certified nutrition coach through NASM, and I can do the formulas for you to give you an idea of a base range to start with. So if you're somebody who's a little bit more active, your protein needs are going to increase pretty significantly. I would also say it probably depends on what kind of activities that you do. So if you're somebody who is in their marathon running era, protein is going to be important, but for something like that is longer duration and essentially intensity, you are going to need more carbohydrates versus somebody who is maybe pursuing more aesthetic and athletic goals. So maybe they are getting into not even just bodybuilding, but they want to get into some of the like powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting sports where it prioritizes a little bit more strength and muscle mass for those sports. So protein needs will get a bit higher, and we'll link all of this information in the show notes as well, so you have that to take back with you. All right, let's move along here and talk about the formula for what we need for a high protein and high fiber breakfast. All right, so the formula, we need essentially 4 things to make this a high protein, high fiber breakfast, but also to make it satiating for us in the long run. So some of you may not enjoy, maybe you don't enjoy breakfast foods, or maybe when you get up in the morning right away, you're not necessarily hungry. That's a very normal feeling depending on how you slept and when you had your last meal was. So if you tend to eat later in the evening, even when going to sleep and getting in the morning, that might not be enough time for your body to send out those signals for hunger just yet. But having a good, robust breakfast can also keep your energy levels stable throughout the day. I'm sure all of us have experienced at some point that mid-morning crash around 10 or 11 where it just feels like you could just go right back to sleep, or it's getting really difficult to concentrate and focus on tasks. So this is to minimize some of that effect. Now, granted, that's a very natural occurrence with food. So even with a high protein, high fiber breakfast, you will eventually get hungry. Your blood sugar levels will drop. That is just something that is going to happen. It is unavoidable. All right, so for our formula, we're going to need a fiber source. We're going to need a protein source. We're going to need a fat source. And then we are also going to include a fruit or a vegetable. So the idea behind this formula is that obviously we're getting our protein and we're going to get our fiber, but we are also adding in a fat, again, for just more satiety to keep us fuller and satisfied longer, and then fruit and our vegetables to increase our micronutrient content. So Micronutrients are going to be our vitamins, our minerals, those elemental compounds. A lot of those are in high concentrations in our fruits and vegetables. That's why they're so colorful. So we're going to bring that back in later today. So what are some ideas for some protein sources? Well, a lot of our very much dairy products are going to be high in protein. So whether it's just straight milk, Greek yogurt, skyr, cottage cheese, if you want to lump eggs into that category, eggs and egg whites. If you move along your animal products, you can obviously incorporate some of your traditional breakfast meats like your sausage, bacon, ham. The trade-off with those is the amount of fat content for those animal products. So just something to keep in mind if you are considering overall caloric intake and how large you want this meal to be from that perspective, from a numbers game. You could also supplement as well, so you could use a protein powder. I have several that I like to use, and I will use them fairly regularly just to kind of fill those gaps. I don't want every meal to be a powder or a protein supplement, so try to prioritize those whole foods when I can, but not a bad idea to have a supplement as a backup here. All right, what about our fiber sources? Again, same thing. We're gonna break down our fiber sources. We've got our grains and our seeds. So again, like our oatmeal, our chia seeds, our flax seeds, those are gonna be relatively high in fiber. And high in fiber, so what does that mean? So if you go through the grocery store and you pick up your loaf of bread, for example, and your loaf of bread, maybe it has like 1 gram of fiber, I would say that's pretty low. We want to look for something that has at least 3 grams of fiber. So remember, if we are trying to shoot for anywhere from 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day, we definitely want to maximize the foods that have those higher amounts of fiber. So even your just traditional oats, 1 serving is clocking in at 4 grams of fiber. Great. That's almost 25% of the way there. So that's a great place to start. Even your whole grain cereals can also be part of that classification as like grains and seeds. So some of those would be like your wheat checks or your post-shredded wheat. Yes, I realize I picked the examples that don't have any like sweetener, sugar, or flavor, but a 1 cup serving of wheat checks has 8 grams of fiber, and 1 serving of post-shredded wheat also has 8 grams of fiber. So not bad considering when our oatmeal had 4 grams of fiber. So the goal again is to diversify the amount of sources that you are having for your fiber needs. It's also good for your gut microbiome to diversify your nutrient profile as well. And then I'm going to call these our fiber enhanced sources. I'm sure you have seen plenty of these, and I do use these products myself, but any of your like your tortillas, your breads, your waffles, where a supplement has been added back into the product. So I love these wraps. They are the Mission Carb Balance brand, and they have a couple of different sizes. They also do white and whole wheat. This just happens to be the whole wheat one. But 1 tortilla is 30 grams of fiber. Most of that is going to be insoluble fiber, by the way. It just means that it's going to pass through. But because it is not something that is broken down, it is going to keep you satisfied for longer. I'm not saying that this should be your one and done. You just check it off and you're good to go. Remember, this is not a nutrient resource that your body is going to break down and utilize. So diversify where you can. Also, a heads up, if you are somebody who doesn't eat a lot of fiber and you are actively working towards increasing your fiber intake, be really careful with these fiber added products. When you increase your fiber intake, you might also start to experience some unpleasant gut symptoms like bloating, gas, just feelings of being full. It can be a little uncomfortable, so very gradually start to ramp up your fiber intake rather than just like, I'm gonna have like 3 of these a day. I mean, please don't do that. Probably hurt a lot. All right, so let's get on and bring it back to our recipe ideas. So the ideas I'm going to present to you today, guys, are going to be traditional breakfast items. That's not to say that you have to eat breakfast foods at breakfast time. If you prefer kind of your more savory things or things that you like to eat around lunch or dinner time, there's nothing that says that you can't have a sandwich for breakfast, or if you wanted to have your like steak, potatoes, asparagus. If you wanted to have that for breakfast, that's totally fine. You know, it's still going to get the job done. But today we're going to work on some overnight oats, which is what we'll make on screen today as our first option. So overnight oats, the base recipe I'm going to supply for you, checks all of our boxes. It's going to get a fiber source, it's going to get a fat source, we're also going to get some protein, and we're going to incorporate a fruit or vegetable as well. Overnight oats are also kind of easy in my opinion. You can make a large batch of them and just put them in the fridge, then every morning you just grab it out, mix it up, and it's good to go. It honestly sets up in about 3 hours anyways. So that's going to be the first option that we are going to make today. What are some other combinations that we could be doing? So I kind of polled everybody to ask what they like to incorporate for their breakfast in the day, especially if it checks those like high protein, high fiber options. So several of you mentioned some kind of a bowl style meal, whether their base is like Greek yogurt or skyr or maybe even cottage cheese, but that high protein base, excellent place to start. And then adding in either some like granola, some oats, some seeds, maybe some fruit as well is a nice easy option as that requires minimal prep, especially you don't have to cook it. So easy to just grab and go, and great to have as a snack later in the day too. All right, I may get made fun of for this one, but a classic avocado toast and eggs would be another excellent option, maybe more for the weekend when you have a bit more time to relax and really savor it. So avocados themselves are relatively high in fiber, about 6 to 8 grams per serving of avocado, especially when you combine that with one of our like fiber enriched sources like a slice of bread, and then adding in some protein with some eggs or egg whites is a great place to get that protein and fiber needs met, and then maybe even adding on a little side of some fruit. Berries tend to be very high in fiber if you're looking for just like a plain like raw fruit option as well. And then anything like apples, pears that have like bulk and volume to them, and then skin on is where you're going to find that fiber as well. One of my other classic favorites is probably a little lame for some of you guys, but just straight up smoothie. Smoothies are also a really great way to just throw it all in, mix it all up, and it's good to go. I feel like smoothies are probably the most versatile thing. So same thing, grab whatever fruit and or vegetable as you need. You get a protein source, you add in some liquid, maybe a little bit of sweetener, and combinations are endless. So love to do some of those. And a bit more of a savory option, last one is like a breakfast sandwich. So whether you like to have a good old maybe like ham or turkey sandwich, totally fine, but we can incorporate some of those traditional like breakfast meats, some eggs, and even add in a bit more vegetables. Those options tend to be very popular. If you've ever been to like Starbucks or any of those grab and go places, will have some kind of a breakfast sandwich. But again, if you can build your own, again, using your either fiber enhanced source or maybe a little bit leaner breakfast style meat, and then really going in on the vegetables, so some spinach or tomatoes or onions, just something to again increase that that micronutrient intake. All right, enough rambling. Let's go ahead and make some overnight oats. So for our oats, we're gonna need 1 container to set it up in overnight. I'm gonna go in with 1 serving. 1 serving of oats is about a ½ cup or 40 grams. So you can measure it out with a scale. I'm just gonna do a measuring cup today. So I've got my 1/2 cup of oats. So I've got my 1 fiber source. I'm gonna add in more fiber sources as well. I'm going to add in chia seeds. So chia seeds, a great option for both your fat and your fiber source. It checks both of those boxes. A serving size, 2.5 tablespoons, is 9 grams of fiber. I'm going to do about half of that just because I've already got the oats in here as well. So we're going to add in 1 or so tablespoon of chia seeds. All right, for my protein sources, I'm going to add 2 protein sources just because that's how I like to make mine. I'm going to add in about 1/3 a cup of Greek yogurt. I am using today a 0% milk fat Greek yogurt. It keeps the calories a bit low, so if you are in a caloric deficit or you're looking to lose a little bit of weight, it's a lot easier to trim those calories from fat than it is to trim it from like carbs and protein, for example. So that's not to say that you couldn't use any other version of yogurt, especially because the fat, again, is going to help keep you satiated. So that is something to consider here. All right, so 1/3 cup or so of Greek yogurt. Find the yogurt gives it just this really thick consistency, which is how I like my oats. Is I do not like them to be soupy. I want them to be almost like a batter. Like you have to really like work it in with your spoon. All right, first protein source. Then we're gonna add in a protein supplement. Let's see. Got some options here. I'm gonna go with unflavored whey protein powder for this morning. That gives me a nice, just neutral base. But I do have some flavored proteins. I have a salted caramel, I have strawberries and cream, and I have a peanut butter one. They're all fine. I find the unflavored ones are pretty nice because they have fewer ingredients in them. Again, that's just a personal preference. That is not to say anything bad about if you like your chocolate or vanilla. If it works for you, it works for you. All right, so we are also going to add in a little bit of vanilla. Give it a splash here. And then we're going to add in some liquid. So for our liquid base, I'm going to be using almond milk today. Again, I'm going for just a little bit of a lower fat option for my oats. This is a fresh thing of almond milk. All right, so about 2/3 to 1 cup. Again, this is where you're going to have to eyeball it based on consistency. So if I don't have a measuring spoon, what I like to do is just pour a little bit in at a time, mix it up until I get it to the right consistency. So I'm going to add a couple of splashes here. We're going to go to town and mix it all up. You'll notice the thing that I haven't added yet is a sweetener. So you can add any kind of sweetener that you'd like. You can add a natural sweetener like honey or maple syrup. You could use any of the sugar alternatives like your xylitol, your stevia, any of those, erythritol, whatever option works for you. Okay. So this is for a nice neutral base. I'm going to add a little bit more oomph to it today, but that's the base recipe and I'll link that in the show notes afterwards. I'm going to be making a Mexican chocolate style overnight oats. Partly why I'm so biased towards the overnight oats in general is that I very much like the endless possibilities and combinations that you can make. Literally any kind of dessert thing that you could think of, candy, ice cream, baked goods, you can more or less create that formula through your overnight oats. All right, so I've got my base mixed up. So with my neutral base now, I'm gonna add to it some spices. We're gonna add some cocoa powder for our chocolate element. We're also gonna add, for the Mexican chocolate, a little bit of chili powder or cayenne if you're feeling extra spicy, and then a little dash of cinnamon too. All right, so we're going in. Cocoa powder, 1 to 2 tablespoons. I'm probably going to go towards 2 tablespoons today. I've got a lot of liquid in here. All right, 2 tablespoons. A little sprinkle of cinnamon. Like I said, folks, this will set up in about 2 to 3 hours. I mean, technically, you can eat it from the get-go if you want. It won't be quite as soft as the oats and the seeds soak. They get a little bit easier to digest. All right, and then last piece here, I'm gonna add in a little tiny bit of some chili powder. Mexican chocolate has that little bit of kick because of the chili powder. All right, some chili powder. Mix it all up. It's gonna go in the fridge. This is gonna be my breakfast tomorrow. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for our last episode of Friday Morning Fuel for 2024. I'll share all of the recipes and the information about protein and fiber resources for you. Once again, if you would like a bit more personalized nutrition information, you can message me and we can get together. Coach Paul is also a certified nutrition coach on our team, so he will also take some appointments if I don't have the availability. All right, thank you guys so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your holiday, and I'll see you guys in 2025.